The member for Cambridge.
Thank you, Speaker, and good morning to you. I'm happy to join the debate on Bill 213 today to express why I will be voting no to this piece of omnibus legislation unless substantive amendments are made. And I will explain why the bill as a whole is problematic. This bill amends 46 different acts, already in existence under 29 different schedules. There are two things that immediately jump out at me when reading this bill. First, bizarre. The bill is very, very bizarre. Second, this bill perfectly embodies the motto, what the government gives with one hand, the government takes away with the other. Let me repeat, what the government gives with one hand, the government can take away with the other. It's curious that the government is trying to change 46 pieces of existing legislation at a time when they believe no one is looking because of their mishandling of COVID and their repeated lockdowns and shuttering of businesses that are putting people out of work. So let's take a closer look. The government is granting 3 Christian colleges the ability to grant additional degrees and granting them the status of universities. Tyndale Christian College, Redeemer Christian College, and the Canada Christian College are all to become universities. The way the bill is presented, it almost corners these 3 colleges into acting against the very principles they promote. In the same bill that is to grant these 3 colleges university status, the government wanted to have all churches and places of worship give up their right to perform marriages free of government intervention and control. That is an attack on religious freedom. Freedom of religion means places of worship are to be free of government intervention. This bill, as drafted, crushes that principle, a principle that this government and many of its members has in the past, during campaign time, professed to support. So, how did the government put these 3 Christian colleges into this predicament? Let's look at the lobbyist record, public for all Ontarians. Tyndale and Redeemer are represented by employees of the lobbying firm Loyalist Affairs, founded by Chris Froggatt, who, multiple news reports have shown, a close working relationship with the government and Premier in the past, providing them political advice and leading the Premier's Election Readiness Advisory Committee, and of course, infamously handling communications with regards to the Premier's attempt to appoint his close personal friend to run the OPP. An interesting or bizarre choice. The Premier claims that no one influences my government, no one influences my cabinet. This bill would seem to contradict this tough talk. The third school, Canada Christian College, is run by the Premier's close friend, Charles McVety, so presumably a lobbyist was not necessary. What did these Christian colleges get in return for the representation? What the government gives with one hand, the government takes with the other. Because in this same bill, as currently drafted and originally intended, this government is imposing itself and all future governments on the practice of marriage in Ontario. One schedule of this bill, Schedule 3, eliminates the automatic election for someone to take their spouse's surname after marriage. That isn't reducing a burden, despite what the bill's title says. It creates a burden. It forces people to now use the burdensome process of legally changing their surname rather than simply assuming their spouse's surname. Instead, newly married people will have to legally change their name by getting a police check and filling out an application with about 29 sections. I don't understand why this is necessary. The current law allows a person to leave their surname as is after marriage or assume their spouse's. What is the issue? Why make it harder? Second, and more alarming, Speaker, is another schedule of the bill, Schedule 8. That grants Cabinet new powers on the practice of marriage in Ontario. Specifically, it gives a cabinet minister of this government, or any future government, which is important to note, the power to 1, create a code of practice that everyone who can solemnize a marriage in Ontario would have to comply with, and if they do not, their authority to conduct a marriage could be cancelled at the minister's discretion. And 2, gives a cabinet minister the power to unilaterally cancel the registration of anyone who can marry a couple in Ontario when it is not in the public interest. Very bizarre and very troubling. It rips away freedom of religion from places of worship and puts it entirely in the hands of one cabinet minister. More troubling, the bill doesn't bother describing what the code of practice is. It doesn't provide a description of what the public interest is. As a result, we don't know what the rationale is for proposing a standard of in the public interest and a code or new concepts on conducting marriages. That's left for a later date to be created and changed at the whim of a cabinet minister in this government or any future government. No debate, no vote, no discussion. Ontarians are to trust this and every future government blindly on this. Well, I don't think blind trust is something that should be given to this government especially, or to any government for that matter. I also know that it's safe to say that the definition of in the public interest created by this government and some of its ministers would not be the same as what I believe in the public interest is, or what Ontarians believe for that matter. I also think it's safe to say that the leaders of those 3 Christian colleges would not agree with this government on what it believes is in the public interest. Is it of the public interest to threaten that you're going to bring down the hammer on the people of Ontario if they don't listen to the Premier? I would say no, but the Premier believes it. In this bill, was the government drafting the threat of a new hammer? A hammer on anyone who solemnizes a marriage in Ontario, including those in places of worship and religious institutions? Churches and other places of worship will now have to comply with a code of practice and a government-defined definition of what in the public interest is when performing marriages. This code can be changed whenever this or any future government wants by a single cabinet minister. This is not freedom of religion. It is a direct threat and attack to freedom of religion. On October 20th, I released a public statement opposing these 2 sections. Not surprisingly, on October 23rd, the Minister of Government and Consumer Services put out a statement on social media stating that the schedule would be amended at committee, but only after it passed second reading. Governing by social media appears to be the new standard in Ontario for substantive government changes to policy traditions in this province. And Speaker, that is not good enough. The claim was that the schedule was created to deal with fly-by-night marriage officiants. The minister wants us to believe that Ontario is the new Las Vegas. Where is the public outcry on this issue? Is the government going to present statistics on this growing issue that they say is driving us? But the fact is that if that was the intention, it would have been drafted right into the language of the bill, right up front, rather than using broad language like in the public interest and a broad tool like a code, both of which are to be created and changed at a later date by one single cabinet minister of this or any future government. Amending this section at committee is not enough. The very inclusion of such a broad tool in this legislation shows that this government does not uphold the authority of religious institutions or religious freedom, and furthermore, it does not take the legislative process that this provincial parliament is here to conduct seriously. It is another example of how this government wants to move the legislative process out of this parliament and into the hands of the executive branch to be decided behind closed doors without a debate or vote, just like Bill 195. The very inclusion of this code and in a public interest are direct threats on freedom of religion and on churches and other places of worship. These sections should be entirely removed from the bill, Madam Speaker, not just changed. I fear that whatever tool is created in committee to change Schedule 8 will be so broad that it will be the starting point of a slippery slope, attacking freedom of religion in Ontario by this or any future government. In the minister's social media post and in the past, members across the aisle have campaigned on telling their constituents that they are for freedom of religion, that the state should leave places of worship alone. But once in power, they threaten and attack freedom of religion by including broad language like this in bills that have nothing to do with marriage. It's bizarre. And as soon as they're called out on it, they immediately buckle and profess once again that they're for freedom of religion. Very bizarre. And this bill then tries to throw a carrot to Christian colleges. But the carrot from the government comes at a cost. What the government gives in one hand, it takes away with the other. And it's funny, Speaker, because last year when I proposed my private member's bill against voter fraud, the government House leader said political parties get to run themselves, and he felt there shouldn't be any laws against the conduct of internal political party hacks who want to commit voter fraud. But now this bill says that that same government that thinks political parties are above the law, the same government that believes it can fine someone for having 10 people over for Thanksgiving, believes that churches and other places of worship don't get to run themselves when it comes to the practice of marriage. So this government presents a code of practice or conduct on those officiating marriages, but they reject a code of practice or conduct on political parties and political operatives on voter fraud. You know, it's interesting, Speaker, because in retrospect, since the bill was introduced on October 6th, I thought we would have heard in some public way from certain members across the aisle. I thought for sure for such an attack on freedom of religion, we would have heard from members from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex, or Niagara West, or any other politician from the government benches who cut their stripes and got their vote and status among the voters by professing to be defenders of religious liberty. I thought those members who profess to defend and speak out and promote religious liberty here to do just that, but they're nowhere to be found when it's their government stripping away and attacking religious liberty. They said nothing in the 2 weeks after the bill was introduced and nothing since. Crickets. So in conclusion, Speaker, I have to ask, what is the point of Schedule 3 and Schedule 8? What is the issue? Why can't we have it drafted right into the bill if it is valid? Or why won't the government just remove those sections? Thank you, Speaker.
Questions? The member for Chatham-Kent-Leamington.
Thank you very much, Speaker. To the member from Cambridge, you know, this particular bill is designed also to help small businesses. And you know, when you take a look at the current situation right now with Peel and Toronto being in a lockdown, nobody likes that. I don't like that. I'm sure no one in this legislature likes it. For the better for people, smarter for people act, is expected to save businesses time and cost and regulatory and policy to businesses. So my question to the member respectfully is, do you, we know that the official opposition, they're badgering us with regards to this particular bill. But again, are you, as an independent, are you
Question.
Are you against businesses whereby this policy will reduce regulatory burdens and make it easier for businesses to create jobs in Ontario?
Thank you. The member for Cambridge.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you to the member from Chatham-Kent-Leamington for his question. So, should we be supporting small businesses and all businesses? Yes, we should. Why are we putting these sections into a bill then about business? This isn't better for people. This isn't better for business. And considering I'm one of the few people that are actually defending small business that was previously on that side, the fact that you've locked down 2 regions and closed all small businesses, only allowing big box stores to open, makes me want to ask you, are you against supporting small businesses?
Questions? Member for Niagara Centre.
Well, thank you very much, Speaker, and thank you to the member from Cambridge. It's always great to hear her speak. She packed a lot of information in that 10 minutes. I'm going to have to get a copy of that for future reference. I'm just wondering, this government has a really troubling record with overreaching on emergency bills, burying all kinds of legislation, in a kind of a stealth manner. Ranked ballots, taking away municipalities' ability to kind of run their own affairs. Conservation authorities, that's been under attack in bills. And now, of course, this situation with McVitie. What is she hearing from her constituents in terms of this Conservative government using a pandemic as cover to bury legislation in their bills in a stealth manner?
Member for Cambridge.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you very much to the member for Niagara Centre, and our great folks in the Hansard Department will make sure that you have a copy, word for word, of my speech, so thank you for that. My constituents in Cambridge, which includes North Dumfries and North Brant, they are extremely disappointed. And we saw that back in July when I voted no on Bill 195, which is a bill that was really draconian and complete government overreach. And my constituents were, across all political stripes, quite happy about my vote on that bill, believing that this government has let them down. They feel abandoned. They feel lied to. And, I want them to know that I will continue to represent them until my term is up, and that I will continue to fight for what they want, which is keeping the small businesses open and ensuring that we are trusting individuals to do what they know that they can do, keeping things safe, keeping people healthy. It's such a disappointment because I've been conducting roundtables for the last few weeks, and my small businesses, they're scared about what this government is going to do next.
Questions? The member for Mississauga-Malton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, due to COVID-19, small businesses are struggling, and one way we can help these businesses is by reducing their cost. Madam Speaker, our government has a target to reduce these costs to businesses by $400 million. And that is why, Madam Speaker, Ontario is at A- grade in 2019, well above C+ in 2018, and that's the change. This bill streamlines and harmonizes regulations with other provinces to make life better for the people, smarter for the businesses, while maintaining health and the safety standards. Through you, Madam Speaker, my question to member would be, what are the things in this bill that you support that will enhance and will make the life better for our small businesses? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Cambridge.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you to the member for Mississauga-Malton. So we know small businesses are struggling. If the government had approached this pandemic in a way where they actually supported the vulnerable and those who actually needed support, instead of just, the 2-week shutdown, okay, we get it, we don't know about the virus, we need to not overwhelm our healthcare system. We are now 8 months, going into 9, of lockdowns and restrictions and no real objective criteria being presented. Let people get back to work. Let people get back to work. We don't need to be supporting them with all this money. We could be putting that towards the vulnerable if you let them get back to work. That's all they've been asking for this entire time. People are struggling. People can't pay their mortgages. They cannot pay their rent. So is this bill needed? Unfortunately, it is. But those 2 schedules that I mentioned are not.
Question? The member for Toronto Centre.
Thank you so much. I listened intently to the member's remarks, and she specifically noted that this government doesn't deserve the blind trust of Ontarians. And I would ask the member if she would care to elaborate from her personal experience why exactly this government does not deserve the trust of Ontarians.
The member for Cambridge.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Toronto Centre. I'm grateful for that question. So I think Bill 195 is a good example of not being able to give your trust completely to this government, or to any government for that matter. Again, I've asked twice in this House for objective criteria for reasoning for lockdown. I got non-answers both times, once from the Solicitor General and once from the Minister of Health. Unfortunately, we're asking for clarity, we're asking for transparency, not just me, but we have people of the public, members of the public asking. We have members of the opposition asking for clarity. So it doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum we're on, we are asking for clarity. We cannot trust you to make decisions when 1 week you're saying something and then the following week you're saying something else. There is contradictions in everything that's being said, and we, as people, as Ontarians of this province, we need clarity.
Questions? The member for Mississauga-Streetsville.
Thank you, Speaker, and I want to thank you for the member opposite for sharing her thoughts about this bill. The COVID-19 pandemic response bill that we brought forward allowed us to provide the relief for the businesses that we've talked a lot about today in the House. And, you know, some $1.9 billion in employer relief by allowing WSIB payments to be deferred, $1.8 billion in property tax deferrals and businesses, $6 billion in relief through the interest and penalty-free period for payments, and also through the budget bill where we've allowed $1,000 for PPE. We're allowing rebates for property taxes for our businesses hit in the areas like in the hot zones, for example, Peel. The COVID-19 pandemic relief bill was a bill that the member opposite voted against. Now, all of the measures that our government is taking to support businesses, yet the member opposite speaks against those great measures that we have taken. I'd like to hear her response on what she believes is a better measure than a lot of the things that we are providing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The member for Cambridge.
Thank you, Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is the third government question, and each time they had an opportunity to ask me about what I actually spoke about, and each time they have not, because they're embarrassed, Madam Speaker, because they know that this bill, which should have been for COVID recovery, because of all the damage they've done to this economy, the recovery that's needed, they've snuck in 2 schedules into this bill that have no place. And the questions I get is, what do you support? Why did you vote no against this? I'm voting no because you put rubbish in a bill. That's why I'm voting no. There is no transparency once again. Ask me a real question that I can respond to. Asking me what great stuff, how much money you're putting into PPE. Guess what? They want to get back to work. They don't want your money for PPE. They want to run their businesses the way they need to feed their families and to pay taxes and to support this economy and to make sure we have enough money for healthcare and education. That's what that Ontario wants.
Question, the member for Hamilton Mountain.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is always fascinating to be in the House when the member from Cambridge takes on the government, a government that she used to be a part of and left for a reason. And now I would say this bill is probably just one of more of those reasons where she pats herself on the back and says that she did the right thing. So it was very interesting to hear her speak about these schedules and the mess that they are going to make and how they are not better for people, and the interesting fact of why the government chooses to put this in a bill that's called Better for People, Smarter for Business. Can she tell me anywhere in this bill that she actually finds measures that are better for business and smarter for people?
The member for Cambridge.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to the member for Hamilton Mountain. You know, I would love to be able to answer that question, but here's the thing. Not only wasn't there anything concrete in this bill, and there were 2 schedules, as I mentioned, that have nothing to do with COVID recovery or supporting people or supporting businesses, but, you know, it seems that I'm getting more work done on this side of the House, because when I was in caucus, when I made suggestions on bills, no one heard me. But now that I'm here, we got the minister making changes on social media. So I'm going to say double thumbs up for that. But Madam Speaker, you know, at the end of the day, if we have a bill that's supposed to be about COVID measures, we should be focusing on COVID.